With a little under 3 weeks to go until the 2025 MLB Draft, we still don't really know what the Mariners plan to do at pick number 3. So we got the best in the biz when it comes to Mariners draft stuff, Joe Doyle, to tell us what he thinks coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. This is Ty and Colby for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the promo code Locked On MLB, that's LOCKEDON MLB, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And as always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, you can check out our Patreon. All you have to do to check that out is click the link in the description of this episode. Let's talk some draft with Joe Doyle. Longtime friend of the show, prospect and draft expert, host of Over-Slot and MLB Draft podcast, writer over at Future Stars Series. He's a very busy man this time of year, and we really appreciate him taking the time out of his schedule to talk with us today. Joe Doyle, welcome back, Joe. Thanks for doing this.
What's up, boys? Good to be back.
So we're catching you kind of on the heels of some pretty big Mariners prospect news. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that real quick before we hop into the draft. A lot of promotions happening right now in the Mariners organization. The two biggest ones, though, Las Montes and Michael Arroyo, both heading to Double-A. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that, what your expectations might be for both of those guys at the Double-A level, all that.
Yeah, I was surprised that Montez was going up. He's been obviously really, really hot at high A, but like a 28% strikeout rate. I figured they might keep him there a little bit longer. I don't think it's egregious what they're doing. I would expect that Laz is going to be in Arkansas for quite some time. It wouldn't surprise me if he's there till the end of 2026. Arroyo is long overdue. I mean, the guy just hits everywhere he goes. I don't think he's going to run into more athleticism, more defensive value, more technical expertise at high A. He was ready for a new challenge. So I'm really excited to see those guys get tested. It's pretty remarkable that Las Montes is going to Double-A at 20 years old. I mean, I don't think that we should totally gloss over the fact that he's not even 21 and he's going to Dickie Stevens, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. Like I said, I think they're going to be there for an extended amount of time, at least Montez. And then, if you get him in the big leagues at 22 years old, I mean, that's an enormous success story from a player development standpoint.
Yeah, and Arroyo also getting to Double-A at 20 years old. It's pretty incredible. So let's jump into this draft. Obviously, it's a huge draft for the Mariners. They get the number 3 pick. I had you on here to talk a little bit right after they got the pick in the lottery. So now we're about 3 weeks out. Before we ask you about specific names, I feel like it's just a good, solid question to get things rolling here. Now that the combine is over, now that the College World Series is over, to just kind of ask you, how many players do you think are truly under consideration for the Mariners right now at pick 3?
I truly believe there's 7 or 8, legitimately 7 or 8 players still under consideration. It's a really interesting draft, you guys. It's not top heavy. It's deep once you get into the 15 to 20 to 60 to 70 range. I think that's where the real value is. So because there's not necessarily a player that the organization or that I think the industry as a whole is falling in love with, even at number 1, I think teams are looking to stretch their money as best they can. So I know it's a taboo way of saying it, but getting bang for your buck with the number 3 pick, I think, is exceptionally important because at the end of the day, at the end of every draft, you want to walk away from that draft with the most value. And if you think a player that you're drafting at 3 is actually in most other drafts only worth, number 8 or 9 or 10 money, that's a pretty easy way to waste your money, which I know isn't a great way of saying it, but yeah, I think they're exploring all avenues to try and bring as much talent into the organization as they can.
So obviously there's a lot of questions about what the Nationals are going to do at number 1, but what about at number 2 with the Angels? I know you've talked about college arm for them. Cade Anderson seems like the obvious fit there, but I know you've also mentioned Liam Doyle. You have any idea what they might, or where they might be leaning?
I haven't heard anything besides those 3 college pitchers: Liam Doyle, Jamie Arnold, Cade Anderson. I think that the interesting thing is, like, I am almost, with the conversations that I've had with people, I'm almost at the point where Cade Anderson at 3 is a pipe dream. Like, it just feels like Cade Anderson getting to 3 is very, very, very unlikely. So whether it's the Nationals, whether it's the Angels, I think one of them are going to take Cade Anderson, and I'm sure the Angels are going to take, either Doyle or Arnold. I have heard rumors like 3 weeks ago that they had a massive, massive underslot deal with a high school shortstop. I just think, like, logically, with where Perry Manassian and Tim McElveen are with their contract statuses, and where the Angels are with their competitive window, and with Artie Moreno wanting to sell the team, none of that makes any sense. None of that adds up. So I would expect they're going to have someone in that organization that can contribute in 2026. I would be stunned if it went otherwise.
If Cade Anderson did get to 3, there's obviously been a lot made of the high pitch counts that he's had, especially recently, over the course of the College World Series. This is a guy that underwent Tommy John in 2022. You buy into that at all? You have any sort of concerns about Cade and his arm?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, the Tommy John thing, you can't escape it. But at the end of the day, Hagen Smith last year had Tommy John in high school too, and he put together one of the most remarkable college baseball seasons in the history of ever. So I think for a lot of teams, you look at it like, all right, well, they already got the surgery, so maybe they're not going to have to need the surgery for a handful of years. Maybe maybe we get 2, 3, 4 years out of them at the big league level before they have to get it again, if they do have to get it again. And a lot of times with those Tommy John surgeries and internal braces, they come back stronger. The UCL is considerably stronger. So listen, at the end of the day, like, the way that college coaches pitch their guys that's just how it is. Like, that's the culture of college baseball. And if you want to disqualify guys for the way that they compete at the college level, you're going to have a really difficult time scouting and evaluating players. Because, I mean, Chase Burns did the exact same thing last year too. He threw like 119 pitches, and that's max effort, max velocity. Like, it just comes with the territory.
Yeah. Colby, you got anything for Joe?
Yeah. Mock draft season. Everybody's putting one out seemingly every other day. Feels like the most common name we see going to Seattle is Avar Arquette, shortstop for Oregon State. We had Oliver Bachner on last week, 2 weeks ago. And he mentioned some of the yellow flags about Arquette and maybe why he's not such a home run pick that he might have seemed like a couple months ago. But what are your thoughts on Arquette? And do you think the Mariners, that is a path that they might actually go down?
So I love Ivar Arquette. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he is dreadfully undervalued as a shortstop. I think he's undervalued as an athlete. I think some of the red flags defensively, athletically, the long levers that are brought up are overblown. All that being said, I have the luxury and I don't take this for granted. I have access to like systems and things that I can do really deep dives on some of these players. The fact that he's 6'5" and is a lean-bodied guy, he has had trouble with velocity and on his hands, and he has had issues with breaking balls low and away. I think if you can take away one of those at the next level and force a pitcher to beat you one way, great. I think you can adjust to that. But I do have concerns as to whether or not Ivar Arquette is actually going to hit at the big league level, because once you get to the big leagues, man, it's 4 or 5 pitches and the command is like nothing you'll ever see. So I'll say this. I think there's quite a bit of risk with Ivar Arquette as to whether or not he's going to hit. I do think there's going to be power there no matter what. But he's a very, very good shortstop, a very good shortstop. I don't know if it is necessarily the appetite for risk that Seattle generally chases in the draft. I'm assuming they would love to have a college bat that moves fast, but I just don't know if he's their flavor.
More from our conversation with Joe Doyle in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're here with Joe Doyle talking Mariners draft. So Joe, we haven't really heard anything about Ethan Holiday or Eli Willits, really any of the prep bats for the Mariners at number 3. However, you've recently mocked JoJo Parker to them, and you've outright said the Mariners like JoJo Parker. So I wanted to ask you about that. How real is that? And what do you think about the possibility of JoJo Parker at 3?
Yeah, I mean, when I say they have 7 or 8 names on their list, JoJo is on the list. There are other high schoolers on the list. Steele Hall is on the list. Daniel Pierce is on the list. To a lesser extent, there's guys further down the board that I think they really like. But, I mentioned at the top, like bang for your buck, like underslot deals. If you can get one of these high schoolers that you really believe in, that you really believe is going to hit, that has tools like Steele Hall, like JoJo Parker, then paying him $6 million with the number 3 pick, or, I guess with the new guarantees, you'd have to pay him $7 million, but paying him $7 million with the number 3 pick, and then getting another big high schooler at 35 and another big high schooler at 59 and another big, like that has more value than taking, anybody like Seth Hernandez for $9 million and then kind of having a more traditional draft the rest of the way. So I know Seattle really likes JoJo Parker. I think the issue with JoJo at this point, even over the course of the last 3 weeks since I've mocked him to Seattle, is it's like, okay, well, he's got a ton of love in Pittsburgh. He's got a ton of love in Miami. And those guys aren't so far behind you that you're going to have a hard time negotiating a signing bonus that's that low when there's teams right on your heels that want him as well. So I do think he is squarely in the fold. I think he's probably one of their 3 or 4 top names with the pick. But at the end of the day, I'm working on another mock draft for next week. He's probably not going to be the pick in that one.
Just based on your personal preferences, how would you rank like your top 3 guys for the Mariners?
My personal preferences. So looking at my board, let's assume Cade Anderson is gone. Is that fair? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So assuming he's gone, my pref list for Seattle would be Liam Doyle. Actually, my pref list would be Eli Willits at 1. I think Eli Willits is just a sum of his parts that is like the safest high school bat you're going to find. Like it's above average speed, it's above average defense, it's elite bat to ball skills. Even if he doesn't grow into power, like you can do a lot worse than drafting Tommy Edman at number 3. People, don't give Tommy Edman enough respect for the big league career that he's put together. And my comp for Eli Willits is Eric Ibar, who tortured Seattle for years and years and years. But Eli would be my first choice. I think any combination of Liam Doyle or Jamie Arnold would probably be 1B and 1C, and then I would have JoJo next.
Interesting. Colby?
Yeah, so obviously we're all in draft mode right now, but drafting good players doesn't mean anything if you can't develop them. And Seattle, obviously, right now, building a very good reputation for their development system. I'm wondering if there's a prospect out there that, maybe isn't getting a ton of hype, but you would just love to see Seattle get their hands on because you think they can do something better than, dozens of other teams and really maximize that guy's talent. Is there somebody like that in this draft?
Oh, yes, 1,000%. There always is, right? You just have to find him. The guy that I'm in love with that I think makes a ton of sense at 35, I don't know if he's going to get there, is Tennessee righty AJ Russell. He is 6'6". I don't know how many innings he has this year. He might have 13 innings this year. They kind of brought him back a little bit too quick from the internal brace, and then they had to shut him down for 3 weeks because of soreness, and now he's back. And He kind of pitched out of the bullpen down the stretch, but it's 6'6". It's 225 pounds. It's nearly 7 feet of extension, and it's a launch height that is 60 inches. Like it's just barely above Brian Wu. And that's from a 6'6" righty that throws 98. So that's the sort of guy that over the course of the last 7 years, Seattle has just knocked out of the park, like consistently over and over. And there are other guys like that. Gage Wood is 6 feet tall, though, and Kyson Witherspoon is 5'11", and they have some similar traits. The fact that you can get a guy that's 6'6" with the elite extension, man, like that's just speaking my volume. The other guy would be Patrick Forbes, who is a righty at Louisville. More conventional. It's a little bit lower arm slot, but that same fastball that just blows up at the top of the zone. It's right now it's fringe average strikes. And I think that's the concern is like, can you get him to a place where he's walking 3.5 per 9, right? Because if you can, it's number 3 upside. But yeah, I mean, at pick number 35, just the way this draft bores out and with where Seattle is drafting, the chances of them taking a college pitcher at 35, I think is extraordinarily low. But if they did, those would be my 2 targets for sure.
If they don't, who else do you have your eye on there at 35?
Any number of high school shortstops. They have so much money, you guys. They have so much money to spend in this draft. And when I say they are struggling to find a way to spend it, I mean it. Like they don't want to spend a lot of money at pick 3. And to be fair, I don't think any team picking in the top 5 wants to spend a lot of money. Cade Anderson, Ethan Holiday wouldn't have gone in the top 8 picks in 2024. They wouldn't have gone in the top 7 picks in 2023. So teams are struggling to want to spend that much money at the top. So they're going to cut a deal at 3. And I would look at guys like, well, I brought up Daniel Pierce. If Daniel Pierce can somehow get to pick 24, 25, 26, I think Scott Hunter and Jerry DiPoto and everybody involved there would start making phone calls. And I think we could see another Ryan Sloan situation where they give one of those high school shortstops, Steele Hall, Daniel Pierce. I'd throw Josh Hammond in there. They might just overpay him to get to pick 35. But if not, I would look at guys like Nicky Becker, who is a New Jersey kid who I believe is from like a similar area as to where Scott Hunter lives. So I don't think that's, out of the question to think that he's seen him more than some other guys. Other guys like Jordan Yost is a shortstop out of Florida that's got a 70 run grade. I would look at those guys. I would look at the 3 high schoolers that I mentioned, and then maybe Nicky Becker and Jordan Yost as options as well.
So outside of that crop of prep shortstops that you just talked about, where is the meat and potatoes of this draft? You talked about this a little bit, but positionally, round/pick wise, like where are teams going to get the most value in this draft?
I do genuinely believe it's in that 35 range. It's in that like 25 to 70 range. There's a lot of good high school shortstops in this class, a lot of them. And there's a decent amount of exciting high school pitching too. I mentioned that Seattle is struggling to spend their money. I would be surprised if they didn't walk away from the 2025 draft with a high school pitcher, whether it be at 59 or 76, 73, wherever that second pick is. There's just so much money. I mean, unless they go balls to the wall at 35 and they overpay someone like I just mentioned, they're going to be able to significantly overslot someone at 55 or 59 or wherever that is, and maybe again in the 70s. So the meat and potatoes of this draft is all on the high school side. And there's some interesting college pitching as well as you get through the 4th round. But yeah, it's going to be a high school heavy draft for Seattle.
Our conversation with Joe Doyle continues in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Rougiette. All right, guys, you've heard of Viagra and Cialis, right? Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. You know what we're talking about. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours. so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. Head to rougiet.com/lockedonmlb and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LOCKEDONMLB and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiet website for full safety information. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We're talking Mariners Draft with Joe Doyle of Future Stars Series and Over-Slot, an MLB Draft podcast over on Patreon. Colby, what do you got for Joe?
Yeah, I'm curious. We just wrapped up the College World Series. Who made themselves the most money over the last month or so with their performance in the postseason?
Well, I think Gage Wood probably made himself the most money.
Yeah,
that's
he
fair.
threw a no-hitter
yeah.
in Omaha. I don't care if it was Murray State. I mean, you got to be a good ball club to get to Omaha, like point blank period. Yeah. So I think Gage Wood took himself from like 25 to 35 to like 12 to 17 in this draft. So, I mean, probably made himself $2.5 million. The other one is Cade Anderson. Cade Anderson, like when you think of the way that the bonuses are divvied out over the top of the draft, Cade Anderson went from a guy who I think Seattle was really hoping was going to just be there at 3 to, if he goes 1, that's $1.5 million difference. You know, I don't know how it's going to be spread out. It may end up being like 800,000, but yeah, he made himself a lot of money. Anybody else that really made themselves some money? I thought Vehiva Alloy looked very good in the postseason, and I think getting more eyeballs on Vehiva Alloy probably improved his draft stock. And I'll throw one more out there just because I like talking about it. I think Caden Bodine at Coastal Carolina. When you play at Coastal Carolina, you don't get a ton of opportunities to show how good you are on a national stage. And I thought his pitch framing and catch and throw and defense in general, alongside the part that he hit like 2 homers, I think he may have moved himself up like 10 spots as well. So all good names.
We're roughly a year removed from last year's draft class. I want to know, how do you feel about the Mariners 2024 draft class now?
Oh man, I have to go back and look at it. I spend so much time on the next draft that I get kind of lost. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, when I look at the 2024 draft, the one thing that stands out to me, and I was thinking about this a couple of months ago, was at the time, I don't think it felt like there was a talent cliff after like pick 15 last year, but there really was, right? I mean, you saw all those college bats go, and you saw Connor Griffin go, and then you saw, you know, Seaver King and Cam Smith and some of those guys go, Christian Moore. It feels like Jurangelo Saintia was, while he was a good pick, like clearly in the next tier of talent. So I think that's the one thing that I think back on and reflect is Jurangelo was just not in the same tier as some of those college hitters. Now, footage of Ryan Sloan was really hard to come by coming into that draft. He pitched in cold weather. It was, you know, he pitched very late in the year. The angles that people got were never great. That kid is unbelievable. That kid's going to be crazy good. Like the way he moves on the mound is so exceptionally explosive, and his tempo down the mound for his size, the extension, how fast his arm is. He's touching 99 already. Like Ryan Sloan looks like he would have been a top 10 pick in 2027 if he would have gone to school. And the fact that they got him for $3 million flat, that's going to pay off very well over time if he stays healthy. The other guys, you know, like the Bailenson and the, you know, all the other relievers, I'm a little bit surprised Hunter Cranton hasn't kind of just moved quickly, but it is what it is. I like that they kind of went for it with Ryan Sloan, because I think you've got a chance to have a legitimate like number 2 maybe an ace at the top of the rotation with some of the stuff that he's throwing right now.
I know you're like pretty much in draft mode right now, but I have to ask you about, this Mariners farm as a whole, as we approach not just the draft, but also the trade deadline. Brendan Donovan might be the best player that gets moved at the deadline, for example.
Yeah.
How many guys in this Mariners farm system would you not trade for Brendan Donovan, I guess?
I mean, outside of a surprise name hitting the trade market, which I don't think anybody's really identified it yet, I wouldn't move Emerson. I wouldn't move Celestin. I wouldn't move Ryan Sloan. You would be really hard pressed to get me to move Johnny Farmello at this point, just because it feels too early. Like, you still want to really figure out what that is. The other guys, like, I don't know. I think also, let me throw just an idea out at you guys, because this was put on my table a few hours back, and I thought it was very interesting. We know, or we've talked about the fact that Ivar Arquette might not make sense for Seattle. And I think a lot of people would say, all right, well, that eliminates them from the college bat thing. What if Seattle drafted Ike Irish, took a big cut at pick 3, and it afforded them the leverage to move Harry Ford? Because listen, there are folks, myself included, who think Ike Irish is the most complete college bat in the class. And even if he doesn't end up at catcher, you can put that guy in right field or at DH or a lot of places. He played third base in high school and do some pretty creative things. So I don't know. I want to throw the Ike Irish idea out there just in case it happens. So it's on the internet.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because we've talked about, like, all right, if Arquette, maybe now you're a bit more willing to trade one of your other middle infield prospects. But instead Irish with Ford is pretty interesting.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm chuckling a little bit because I actually threw that idea out there on a private Slack that we're a part of. That, like, should we be talking about Ike Irish in like the top 5? And it was pretty roundly
resounding no.
Yeah. Like, no, that's stupid. They're not. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well,
but
listen,
it's just
like,
funny.
At the end of the day, like I said, like, I think this team is trying to figure out how to most appropriately spend their money. And if you think Ike Irish for $6.5 or $7 million at pick 3 is the most, like, responsible value move, and I'm not saying he's a bad player, I have him at number 10 on my board, but if you think it makes the most sense and he stretches out the value for the rest of the draft, and it affords you the ability to move Harry Ford 2 or 3 weeks later, I think you need to seriously consider that. You never draft for need, but you can kind of ostensibly think it as, okay, we're drafting Ike Irish and it's providing us value because we can trade Ford for a different value. There's ways to think about this draft. There's ways to attack this draft that I think are kind of big brain, galaxy brain things that I maybe need to be brought up a little bit more. But to answer your original question, Ty, I wouldn't move Emerson. I wouldn't move Celestin. I wouldn't move Farmello or Sloan. Some of the other guys, and I would be hard pressed to find a match for Montez that makes a lot of sense, but I think that answers your question.
So tell us a little more about Ike Irish then. Like, what's the bat? What's so special about the bat that you would consider taking him at 3 when nobody else is really talking about this right now?
Yeah. So, one, he was the best hitter in the SEC, and historically, come on, like, it's the SEC. It's the closest thing to AA that you're going to find. It's at least in proximity to high A. It's like solid average to above average bat to ball skills. It is remarkable barrel awareness. His hard hit rate was over 61% this season. Average exit velo was in the top 25 in college baseball, hit a ball 114. I think the thing that I love about Ike Irish is, while some people will frame it as, okay, he had just like average contact rates inside the zone, like it was fine. The guy had a 76, and I might be getting nerd brained here, but that's fine. The guy had a 76% contact rate when he swung at pitches outside of the zone. He had a 24% whiff rate on balls when he swung at them. And the crazy thing about that is not that he did it. The crazy thing about that is he had a 95 mile an hour exit velo this year, average exit velo. He had a 61% barrel rate this season. and he's swinging and making contact at pitches that aren't strikes. That 114 I mentioned was a ball below the zone. It wasn't a strike. His hardest hit ball was a ball. So I think his adjustability, his ability to cover the zone, his ability to cover pitches outside of the zone, to foul pitches off, to battle, I think it really stands out. If you look at the numbers and you look at his at-bats on the surface level without going that deep, I think you see an average hitter. But I think if you dive deeper and you look a little more under the hood, I think this could be like an above average to plus hitter who's just kind of finding his footing.
How many prospects in this draft, just total, would you rank higher than Colt Emerson?
That's going to be really telling. I think one.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll get who it is, though. He's not my flavor.
Irish.
It's Zach Irish. That's right.
Seth Hernandez.
I think Seth Hernandez would be the only guy, and I don't have him. Yeah, I think Seth Hernandez would be the only guy that I would take above Colt Emerson, but the level of risk that comes alongside a high school righty, we've seen. I almost tweeted about it, and then I was like, this is just going to bury some guys. But I was like, Mick Abel, tough look so far. Andrew Painter, it's taken a long time. Jackson Jobe, down again. Dylan Lesko, down again. Max Meyer, Max Meyer was Minnesota, but you get my point. Like, none of these high school righties are working out. Like, none of them. The precedent isn't great. And I think especially when you're in a front office and time is not on your side, maybe it's on the side of this front office, but you get my point. You need guys that can contribute now, not in 2029. So he would probably rank ahead of Colt Emerson, but that would be the only one.
Joe, this was great as always. Really appreciate your insight. Let's get you back on sometime after the draft to talk about what the Mariners wind up doing.
Let's do it. Good to be with you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much. All right, that is going to do it for our show. Thank you again to Joe Doyle for joining us, and thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty and Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty and Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.